And greetings and welcome to the Mount Rushmore podcast. My name is Jeff, and I'm joined as always by my good buddies, Richard.
Hello.
And Michael.
Howdy.
Richard and Michael, they deliberate the most ubiquitous aspects of many different topics. And this week, it is very esoteric. This is the Mount Rushmore of songs that exist only in TV or movies. Now, this topic was suggested by me, Jeff, based on, gosh darn it, I'll admit it, something I saw on TikTok. People were talking about TikToking about songs that they saw in movies or TV that are songs that exist in that world, not part of the score or soundtrack. So I thought it'd be a fun thing to debate. We've come to this, guys, 251 episodes in, and are getting inspiration from
to TikTok. Yeah.
a Chinese social media identity theft.
The communists finally got you, Jeff.
Yeah, they finally got me.
We knew they would.
We knew they would. But you guys love movies and TV and music, so maybe it'll work out. So I believe the last time I put somebody on the spot, it might have been Richard. So let's go with Michael as the first person.
Okie dokie. Well, what I did, I didn't make a category, but I just set a couple of ground rules. One, I didn't choose anything that was from like a musical, because I felt like that was a whole special sort of thing that was just like, oh, okay, musical.
Yeah.
And that might have been it. If I think of what the other rules are as I approach them and break them, then I guess I'll let you know. But my first choice is the Cantina song from the movie Star Wars.
Oh, that's fun.
By Figure and Dan and the Modal Nodes. And what I liked about this piece of music is
it's not John Williams. It's Figure and Dan and the Modal Nodes.
A name that was given to them years and years after the release of the movie. That was probably either given to them in the book Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina, or it was developed in one of like the trading card games or something that they did in like kind of this 10-year span after Star Wars had come and gone, where it was just like filling in the gaps. But what I love about this song is, one, it's within the scene. It is also just so it's three aspects. One, it's within the scene. So it's what's that term? I sound like a dumbass.
Oh,
I'm gonna come.
I mean, it's like Latin for from in the thing.
Yeah,
mise en scene.
Not mise en scene. No.
It begins with a D. It's here. Let me go back. I can come back to that. So what I love about this song in particular is that it has three aspects. One, it's within the scene itself. So it's not just like this, John Williams score that's running through this movie that nobody hears. It's playing by an actual band in this cantina. Two, it pops into the scene where, Obi-Wan tells Luke, "Oh, this place is a real dirty shithole. So just watch your step." And then immediately, this triangular headed alien pops up and the music plays at the exact same time. And it just kicks in and you're just like, you're in it. You suddenly become Luke Skywalker this moment where you walk in and this loud, awful music is playing and these fucked up creatures that, have all like these horrible 1950s, like bug masks are all around. And like, you're just as confused as he is. He lives on this planet, but I don't know how much time he spends in the shitholes in Mos Eisley. And the third thing I just love about the song is it's just so different from everything else within Star Wars. Like, the music is very classical and very grand and very sweeping. And it's this music and really like one of the songs in like Jabba's Palace played by, the Max Rebo band that are just like these real outliers in these movies. And they try to kind of recapture the essence of this song with the Jabba's Palace song and later on in like The Force Awakens and other things. But this song is just so good and so unique and so just strange. And it feels strange. It feels strange within a strange universe.
Wow, that's a fun That's a fun observation, and it's fun to even discuss what the unfolding origami whateverness of Star Wars, and when you first saw it, that it was already a universe that didn't explain itself, and then within it, it takes a broad shift to introduce us when we walk into this cantina. To Luke, it's a whole new world, and to us, it certainly is too. Wow, that's a lot of fun. I would also say it's his. This was probably the first Star Wars thing that I bought with my own money as a kid. Was the 45 to this song when I was a little kid, and I think
this song.
The song, and I think I liked it because it was reminiscent of a 1920s song. Or it felt very Charlie Chaplin-y or something. There was something Dixieland or something, or early jazz about it. I guess Johnny Williams was also a jazzer too. So yeah, there's something very foreign but familiar about it. I'm still trying to think of the word that starts with a D, or trying to think of the word that means from the. Oh, we cut that out.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
No, I like this choice because it just makes me wonder if this is what passes as pop music.
Yeah.
In the Star Wars world, is this like their version of bubblegum pop?
Yeah.
Well, the type of music is called jizz wailing, so you can just go with it. They couldn't just say jazz; they had to just change it. They had to add one change of a vowel, and it was the most unfortunate. It couldn't have been juzz. It couldn't have been like gaz. It's jizz, Jizz.
So funny. So funny. I do wonder if George Lucas, when he was sitting down and Johnny Williams was playing this song for him, went, "What? This is what they're listening to? No way." Faster and more.
Diegetic.
Diegetic. Oh, cool. Okay. That means, of the thing. Okay. All right, Manfredi, what's your first choice?
All right. My first choice is a song by Britain's loudest band.
Oh, wow.
Spinal Tap.
All right.
And that song is Big Bottom.
Oh, nice.
One of their crowd-pleasing favorites. I don't know how much I need to really defend this one. It's just, it's the lyrics are so stupid clever.
Yeah.
Which is something that you find in a lot of the Christopher Guest. I mean, I could have had I kind of wanted to make sure that I had one Christopher Guest musical song choice in there.
Yeah.
And this was the one that, a lot of choices. I don't want to spoil it in case Michael has any, but there's a lot of choices I could have gone from with this. But this one for me is just the perfect mix of the lyrics that are so dumb, but you have to be really smart to write those dumb lyrics.
Yeah.
I think T-Bone Burnett said that if you're writing a song for a movie that's supposed to be someone else's song, even if it's supposed to be a bad song, you still need to make it a good song.
Oh, it's interesting. Yeah.
And I don't know if Big Bottom's supposed to be a good song or a bad song. I know it's a banger. I know that. I know that any song where you've got three people playing bass,
yeah,
is going to be a winner in this bass player's book.
That's fun.
And it's, it even within the context of the world of Spinal Tap, where a lot of their other songs are very pretentious and kind of this sort of rock and roll taking itself too seriously, like Stonehenge.
Yeah.
This is clearly supposed to be a novelty type song and something they're having fun with.
Yeah.
And I think that's other than, beyond the fact that it's, like I said, just the puns and the wordplay is just so dumb and so perfect. I think the fact that it's supposed to be such a fun song within the world of Spinal Tap is why it's sort of become this, it's kind of stood the test of time, so to speak.
Do you think it was directly inspired by Queen's Fat Bottom Girls?
I think that was certainly one of the songs that that inspired it. Yeah.
I could see the Bon Scott lyrics in Big Balls. Some of the Bon Scott AC/DC stuff might be. And I imagine, even though they were a skiffle group to begin with, they consider themselves to have blues roots, and there's nothing more bluesy than a song about a derriere. I think, yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, you'll go all the way back to "Give Me Some Money," which is like
hmm
their version of the Stones doing a blues sort of
yeah,
jam,
yeah.
and you kind of can extrapolate that all the way up to Big Bottom. And I can't believe I'm being so scientific talking about
Yeah.
fucking Big Bottom.
Well, it is fun to me. The Spinal Tap existed in a world that was achingly familiar, yet some of the music was very uniquely familiar. And also, like you write that it does dwell in the scatological, yet they had to work hard to make it so dumb. Like to get so much dumbness into that, you'd have to work pretty hard. My baby fits me like a flesh tuxedo.
tuxedo,
Gonna sink her with
like
my
to sink
feet.
you with my big torpedo. Yeah, it's. I mean, like I said, it's. I remember being a kid and the first time. That might have been the thing I laughed hardest at when I was like 8 or 9. Or the first
Yeah.
time I watched Spinal Tap, because I was 8 or 9, and talking about butts is the funniest thing you could possibly do.
Yeah.
And that hasn't changed really. I shouldn't say 8 or 9. Still to this day, clearly works.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Okay, Winfield, what's your second choice?
Well, I will stay within the Harry Shearer combined dark universe, and a kiss at the end of the rainbow.
Oh, that's a wonder. Oh, wow. Okay.
From Mitch and Mitchie from the movie A Mighty Wind. And maybe it's just because we watched this a couple weeks ago, and Emily had never seen it, and it's just so fresh in my mind. I really wanted to at first choose the song Old Joe's Place by the Folksmen, the Harry Shearer, Michael McKean, and Christopher Guest.
At O's.
It's just so silly. But maybe I was just feeling a little touched and melancholic by how well Catherine O'Hara and Eugene Levy pull off like this kind of estranged couple with, like, singing this big heartbreaking breakout song that everyone is just dying to see be performed. It's not just that, like, it's this thing that they've built up within the movie to be like this real special moment between the two characters, but then also everyone in the audience, and then also all of the people performing within like this kind of reunion, is that they're waiting to see if there is like this kiss between them. And it's just it's a sweet song. And it's, like the opposite. It's like the exact opposite of Big Bottom.
Big Bottom.
Where it's super meaningful and just is this real big connective point. And I don't know, maybe it's just that Eugene in the movie, where Eugene Levy just goes in and out of like this transcendental state of mind where he looks insane 1 minute, and then on stage he's performing and he's just normal. And then as soon as the song's over, his eyes glaze over and they look north and south again, and you're just like, how does he do it?
Oh yeah. I feel like that it did the alternate history of folk that is depicted in that film. It reminds me, this is the only thing I can think of, is Galaxy Quest, where everything about Galaxy Quest is absolutely right about Star Trek, yet it's all one tick off just a little bit. And the idea of these aging folkies coming to town hall for one last show, and this guy who's probably not too different than maybe Seymour Stein, or trying to think of like people who were heads of that folk movement, and yeah, and then the idea that there were these sweethearts of folk that could have been, it's almost like if one was Bob Dylan, one was Joan Baez, yet he's playing one of them somewhat kind of like Jerry Garcia. But yeah, everything about that was so sweet and tender. And it almost reminds me of that moment. What's his head? Christopher Guest played on stage with Bob Dylan, the real Bob Dylan, during the real folk movement. So he has real actual roots as performing back then. So it almost seems like some of that authenticity rubs off on that that movie, because I think the Main Street Singers are supposedly the new Christie Minstrels or
Yeah.
something like that, and obviously the Folksmen or the Kingston Trio or something. But yeah, the authenticity that they nail so much, even though they're playing these characters so broadly.
Yeah.
And then Catherine O'Hara is a shadow of herself when she is scenes later playing at a ostomy continence convention where her new husband sells colostomy bags or something, playing the auto harp. Yeah, that's so beautiful.
Reality comes crashing back.
Yeah,
after such a majestic moment. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But I think a lot of like the Christopher Guest films have that moment, that end sense of like you've reached the pinnacle, like in the Best in Show.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. Yeah.
Best in Show, they have a similar moment where things just kind of come back to reality for everyone. Same thing with Waiting for Guffman. It's all of a sudden the director, Corky St. Clair, is selling tchotchkes in New York. He's gotten out of the business or whatever. And each one of them had this moment where like the peak has happened in these people's lives. And then it all goes back to some sense of normalcy or sub-normalcy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really thought if you're going to Christopher Guest, I thought you were going to go with the Doing It Doggy Style song at the end of Best in Show. But also a great choice. I love this choice. I remember watching the movie and being genuinely affected, which is not something that you typically are in a Christopher Guest film. I don't think he's really going... For what I know about Christopher Guest, he's someone who's very dry and has a very like clinical look at to try to approach what's funny and what isn't. And I don't know that he normally goes after big emotions. But for whatever reason, I remember watching that last scene and you're waiting for like the gag to show up.
Yeah.
There isn't one. There's no joke there. It's done seriously.
My Christopher Guest story.
Yeah. Jeff Cass.
I had a short film in the HBO Aspen Comedy Festival, and it showed on Friday night, and I basically had to drive. Somehow I had stayed up all night, 2 nights in a row. And by the time the awards ceremony was to come, I went there optimistically thinking I was going to win something. And of course, if I was going to win something, I would have been informed or something like that. But I was standing behind Morgan Spurlock, whose film Super Size Me had just hit. And he gets a call and he's talking to the person. He goes, yeah, oh, okay, sure. Yeah, I'd love one. And he hangs up and he goes, it's Volkswagen. They just sent me a car. The world is just giving accolades to this guy. And we're going to this award ceremony, and Christopher Guest is on stage, and they're giving him an award, like the HBO Comedy Award or something like that. And he couldn't have been less excited to win the HBO Comedy Award. And somebody did a big speech, and then he comes on stage and goes, well, thank you for this, whatever it is. And he looks at the audience. Any questions?
That feels so on brand with him.
And I asked, I thought he was serious. I said, what's your next movie? And he said, I'm out of here. And just left. I was like, man, I'm the dumb shit who opened his mouth. I feel like
take your top off.
Take your top off. I'm not going to
Free bird.
Some loser douchebag in the audience didn't even get a Volkswagen. All right, that'll be cut out. Also that the lyrics are so poignant due, I think, the free love movement, the promise of the 60s, young people being different than their parents. They're not about material things. There's a kiss that's more precious than a band of gold. And there's this thing that's about relationships that's stronger than marriage. It's stronger than a piece of paper. It's called love. And that song encapsulates that sentiment and that sentiment of the time that has passed. And then we see later Catherine O'Hara is married a businessman who loves probably his model trains more than he loves her. And all that idealism and stuff has just washed away from her life. And she's just destitute of meaning without it. So, oh God, yeah. Oh, Manfredi.
All right. My second choice.
Make it a Spinal Tap for Pete. Okay.
I'm just gonna
Lick my love
Live My
pump.
Love Pump is next. Yeah. My next choice is England's Prefab Four, the
Oh, nice.
Rutles,
Oh, nice.
with the song "I Must Be in Love,"
Oh, wow.
which was the first song that the idea of the idea of doing this Beatles spoof
Hmm.
kind of came from this song, or the song was the first thing that was kind of presented to the world as the Rutles. So the Rutles came from Eric Idle's post Monty Python show Rutland Weekend Television, and it was a segment on basically this. It basically was a music video, like it was from A Hard Day's Night, of Rutland's most famous band, the Rutles, and it was a song written by Neil Innes, who also sang it and kind of played the John Lennon type character. And Neil Innes had been in the Bonzo Dog Doodah band, which had actually performed in and had a song on the soundtrack of the Magical Mystery Tour. And their big song in the UK was "I'm the Urban Spaceman," which was actually produced by Paul McCartney. So there's all these neat Beatles connections
Yeah.
with them. And it was so well received that they decided to do a TV movie that was basically a 2-hour documentary about this fake band, the Rutles. So it's basically creating this world where there were no Beatles, but there were Rutles. And like I said, Neil Innes is the John character, Eric Idle is the Paul character, and Neil Innes had wrote like 20 songs, all in the different styles of the Beatles
Yeah.
periods throughout their history. And it's such a high wire act to try and write something that is a Beatles song without having it sound like you're copying a Beatles song. Like, I think that would be one of the hardest things to do, is to try and write something that's in the style of A Hard Day's Night,
Hmm.
but it's not close enough to it that we're going to get sued,
Yeah.
basically. So I Must Be in Love is, like I said, it's kind of their Hard Day's Night era song. It's got this kind of chiming, 12-string guitars, 3-part harmonies, kind of everything you would expect from a Lennon and McCartney song of that era. And it stands up as if it had been released as a Beatles song, it would be a pretty good, damn good Beatles song.
Hmm.
Um, and I grew up loving the Beatles, and I grew up as a kid, watching the Beatlemania documentaries and the Complete Beatles and all that kind of stuff. So I was pretty well versed at a young age with all of the backstory of the Beatles and their history and all the personal drama and all that stuff. So watching the Rutles, which basically is almost year for year what happened to the Beatles, but all, like you said, kind of done kind of a twisted, everything's off about it a little bit sort of way. Just gave me nothing but joy.
Yeah. The work that Neil Ennis, I think if it's decades later, I'm not surprised that people crack the code on a cultural phenomena because you have so much hindsight. But considering it was years later that Neil Innes had probably been writing fake Beatles songs since the Beatles came around, but to be able to look back on their career and then kind of crack the code and have the enough removal from the tsunami of culture that the Beatles put out into the world, that I think is crazy. Like, I think people could maybe do a good painter now could probably do a Picasso from each of his periods, but at the time there was no way you could understand. You couldn't crack the code of that guy, probably.
Right.
So yeah, that's so amazing, and I think being so much in the pocket, I think Eric Idle is like George Harrison's BFF, and these people being so close to that culture, it also kind of helps remind one how funny the Beatles were. Like, the Beatles were so interested in the Goon Show and British humor and stuff. So
Yeah. By the way, they made a sequel in 2002 called "Can't Buy Me Lunch."
ah.
Do, do not do not seek it out.
Oh no.
It is it is terrible. Neil Innes's or Eric Idle, I don't think was involved in it, if I remember correct.
Uh-huh.
Oh, he was.
Oh.
He was involved in it. Neil Innes was sort of involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's late era Eric Idle, so approach it at your own discretion.
Yeah.
Although the Archaeology album that came out 20 years later, which was their version of the Beatles anthology, is very good because that's basically just all Neil Innes songs. So you're in good shape with that. Don't watch Can't Buy Me Lunch. I cannot emphasize that enough. It is,
Oh, no.
oh boy, not good.
Okay, we are at our halftime. I'm going to beg you, implore you to download, rate, and review past episodes of the Mount Rushmore podcast. And we could also ask you to get in a dialogue. Let us know what kind of topics you'd love for us to tackle next. What sacred cows you would love us to skewer, trash, and burn. We can be reached on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's safe to go back on Twitter now. It is.
It's true. They're all gone.
They're all gone. So yeah. So dudes, we're back. Winfield, what's your third choice?
My third choice is it's the song Free Love Freeway by David Brent from the band Foregone Conclusion, from the 2001 British Office episode Training, in which David Brent just completely takes over like kind of this training session inside their office at in Slough of their paper company, and just goes on this ridiculous, David Brent is such an interesting character. He's so pathetic and he's so into himself, but he sees himself as like this great talent. He sees himself as this great comedian and actor and manager and leader and musical talent. And he kind of puts this entire training session on hold for him to go and go home and get his guitar and come back and sing just this really pathetic song that is so irritating to the trainer, who's sitting there just trying to do any amount of work. And of course, Tim, his, the what's the American version of Tim?
The Jim Halpern character.
The Jim Halpern, yes. Tim is he's just egging him on. He just loves it. He doesn't want to work. He doesn't want to pay attention to any of this. And he just keeps encouraging him and interrupting him and trying to sing along with him on his kind of real sad and skeezy and dumb lyrics that don't really make any sense, that are all these unfinished thoughts. And it's just wonderful. And it's a song that has just stayed with me. I think what it is, it's a song that has just stayed with me for 20 years. It's a nothing, it's a one-off song in the TV show. And it is just, I've got Free Love Freeway just rattling around my head all the time. And I just love it. I don't know what to say. It's not too terrible a song, even though the lyrics are pretty
just
awful.
Bad enough. It's bad enough that it's just bad. It's catchy enough that it gets stuck in your head, but it's also bad enough that you're like, oh, this is not going to go well. Whenever he winds up, doesn't he wind up quitting and go at the end of the series and tries to make it as a professional musician and fails miserably? I believe that's what happens.
I don't quite remember what the end of the end of the show where
that happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The end of the show that I remember was the Tim and Dawn stuff. Mm-hmm. It's funny. It's less about, Brent, even though the show was about Brent, but all of the emotional baggage was carried between those two. But they eventually went and made Ricky Gervais went and filmed a music video for this that they put out, and it's like a fuller version of the song. I think supposed to encapsulate as if David Brent had gone off and spent all his money to film a music video for this one song. And there's all these additional lyrics that I don't know. So it feels like it's this interesting the full version of the song is this interesting kind of Easter egg unknown thing to me, but I just know it as the in the office setting of it and the constant interruptions by Tim and all this stuff.
I'm fascinated by this because I'm reading the Wikipedia on this now.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently Ricky Gervais did a live tour as David Brent in the foregone conclusion. Did a series of YouTube videos under the title Learn Guitar with David Brent and published the David Brent songbook. Which to me kind of speaks to, yes, he would. It's confusing whether or not he is just taking the joke and running it to its natural foregone conclusion, or whether or not there is a little bit of him trying to play out his past music aspirations, because he actually was in a new wave group that got signed to a record label and had a couple of singles out in the UK, like back in in the early 80s. So I just, there's always part of me whenever he picks up the guitar in the David Brent world where he's trying to relive that to some level. I don't know. It's just find it very fascinating. He was also he was also apparently the manager of Suede for a little while before they made it big.
Wow.
Every part of me is like regretting not choosing a song from Flight of the Conchords right now.
I'm amazed when somebody can do bad good and do good bad, when they have enough awareness to be able to satirize themselves or to take a thing that I imagine Ricky Gervais would have loved to. I imagine when he was a musician, he probably still had a sense of humor, and he might have been clowning around on stage and tried to be a comedian on stage. But when you would play the music, Sienna Dancing or whatever his hit was or song was, I'm sure they were trying to play it. They were trying to be known as musicians. So the fact that he could write a bad song, I'm just amazed when people can do that. It's like I'm amazed that William Shatner has a sense of irony about it.
Oh, Jeff, I'm capable of writing bad songs. Trust me. I know how to write a bad song.
I know how to write a bad song. But yeah, it's pretty fascinating to me. Who was it? Creed Bratton in the American Office was a musician too, right?
Yeah, he was in
sure.
Was it Blood, Sweat, and Tears?
I think. Well, I'll pretend I didn't just wiki the Grassroots.
Grassroots, that's what it was. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm always amazed when people can do things with a straight face, pretend to be a bad musician or to pretend to think a song is good even though he knows it's bad. So that's so funny. Okay, what do you got, Richard, for your third?
All right, so I did mention a fake Beatles band, and I hesitated with whether I was going to make this choice or not because I'd already gone down the Beatles route. But this is sort of a fake version of the American bands in the mid 60s attempting to be the Beatles.
Oh.
And I am talking about That Thing You Do.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
By the Wonders.
Nice.
From the movie That Thing You Do.
Nice.
And this song has to do a lot of heavy lifting. Because if you watch the movie, they play there's a few Wonder songs in there, but That Thing You Do gets played a dozen times.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not kidding, during the course of this movie. So it has to be like a great song. It has to be like perfect. And it is. I mean, it's almost a perfect song. Written by Adam Schlesinger, the late great guitarist and songwriter from Fountains of Wayne. Did a lot of stuff on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Obviously, someone who we lost last year, and it was obviously a big loss for music. It was a song. I remember reading in the college music journal, which was the big industry trade for the college radio scene when I was in college doing college radio. And there was something like 300 different submissions when the call went out that, hey, Tom Hanks is making this movie and they're looking for a 60s type song. I guess they said like the Knickerbockers, which was this like American kind of garage rock, kind of want to be the Beatles band from that period. Like They Might Be Giants submitted a song. Gin Blossoms submitted a song, but this one just kind of stood out. And apparently they didn't really even have to do much from the demo. They pretty much just took the demo and, re-recorded it, but it was pretty much a full and complete song.
Yeah. Mike Viola
And
tells a story about not wanting to do the vocal at all, like turning Adam Schlesinger down multiple times because he didn't want to do, like, he'd been out to LA. I don't want to do the Hollywood music thing. I don't want to be that guy.
yeah, he's like not credited correctly in the movie. He's like credited as assistant wardrobe producer or something really goofy, like funny, because he didn't want to be. He thought it would be a detriment to his music career.
Yeah.
If he was associated with the song, and of course years later it turned out to be anything but the case. And it's I love how it exists in the context of the movie, that it's originally this kind of like mid-tempo, almost like ballady type song, and then Guy, aka Shades, the drummer, when his first gig with them, decides to just take it at this like super fast pace, which the lead singer Jimmy initially is upset about, until suddenly everyone responds to this up-tempo song and starts singing and dancing and kind of going nuts for it at this talent show. And it kind of just turns the whole song and the whole fortunes of the band on its head. So I love that kind of way that they sort of showed the evolution of this song, which is something you could totally imagine hearing a story about some hit song from the 60s having that exact same storyline.
Supposedly Please Please Me was that song.
Oh, really?
That it was a mopey ballad, and either George Martin suggested they play it faster, or Ringo was just playing fast, and that was the reason that one was at that tempo. But it was a mopey Lennon ballad. So
well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And I just there were so many of those. I mean, the movie hit it on the head. There were so many of those like kind of one-hit wonder type bands, wonders, that came out of the U.S. and England too. It's just attempting to follow the Beatles' lead. And again, I think it's very hard to write kind of this to get the sound of that right without like making it obvious and cliched.
Yeah,
and they did a great job with it.
Yeah, I think that is one of Adam Schlesinger's gifts that you see playing throughout all of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Is we need a song that feels like Duran Duran, feels like Barry White, but if it feels just like one of those songs, then it's not good enough. It has to feel like something that would have been cut from the album or something. So
yeah, it has to be like, it has to feel like it's a deep cut and not necessarily the one song that everybody knows.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Funny, I got a chance to see Mike and Adam play that song at the Hotel Cafe, and it was the funnest night of both Mike Viola and Adam Schlesinger have had careers writing goofy songs for movies. And I know Mike wrote some, Adam wrote some for Josie and the Pussycats and music and lyrics. And Mike wrote some for Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. so, and I think he wrote some for Get Him to the Greek too. So it was funny to hear them talk about you kind of got to write a good song. But then here are these two guys who are mostly musicians who also kind of want to be funny with the lyrics. So, but you can't be too funny. You can't be too funny or it's winking at the camera. But yeah, what a fun night. And Mike Viola has this kind of like, I've seen him play with the Wild Honey Orchestra, and he's saying, "Oh, darling." Yeah. "Oh, darling," the Beatles song. And that's just a belter. Like, I think Paul McCartney had to cut that together from 4 or 5 different takes, and Mike Viola nailed it just like one take live. So yeah, that's tough.
That's cool.
Tough. Yeah,
that's cool.
Man, Winfield, what's your fourth?
My last choice is a song from the 2017 movie Coco.
Oh,
but it's not the big song. It's not Remember Me. It's Un Poco Loco, which is the little delightful song sung by Miguel and kind of sung and performed and danced by Miguel and Hector on stage at this just mentioned talent show sort of competition thing at this little talent show to earn like a spot to go be at Ernesto, Miguel's supposed great-great-grandfather's side during the last night of the Day of the Dead or festivals. And the Remember Me song in the movie is so beautiful, but this song just hits so hard. It is so joyous and so fun. And it really stood out at a moment of this like real great bonding between Miguel and Hector, like performing on stage, kind of across, the eras of time. It's just so silly, and the lyrics are so wonderfully done. And it was the song that in this movie about, these fictional ghost people, these fictional skeletons, that just stood out the most to me. That Miguel seems so at ease playing and so confident and so just so into it. And I just loved the balance between the two of Miguel playing on stage and Hector taking his head off and dancing around and just being so completely easy together. And I thought it was just it's probably like my favorite moment of that movie. And I don't know, it's the song is just this thing that stuck with me. I think a lot of the choices for my songs today are the ones that just stuck with me the most.
Mm-hmm.
They held my attention the most, whether it was God, I should have chosen Eat It Joe's or Old Joe's Garage. That was the one that really stuck with me for just because how silly it was. I think there's definitely a vein of silliness through my choices. But
well, isn't it? Is there a time when they are considering? I don't know how much Miguel thinks Hector is really helping him. There's a moment where we don't know, obviously, the Hector's real identity, and we know he's a con artist, or we believe him to be a con artist. We don't know what motivates that.
Yeah.
But at that point, you see chemistry between those two that is more than just acquaintances. You see something about how they interact and work together and are in each other's brains. That
I don't think there's like a need necessarily for like Hector to get on stage with Miguel in that moment. Like he's performing the song and it's nice, and then he feels compelled to be up there. You watch the scene, it's Miguel can play the song and he's doing well, and then of course Hector's kind of like this hype man, this hype skeleton that comes out and dances around.
We all
and breaks it down. We all need a hype skeleton to take off their head and do the worm or whatever. But yeah, I don't. Maybe it's that it maybe he couldn't help himself but do that.
Yeah. I think it is starting to reveal what Hector's true identity is to us, which is kind of a fun plot element, even though we're just lost in the silliness of the song, and Miguel perhaps getting farther towards his goal of being a real performer. So yeah, that's a fun
that was
choice.
definitely a movie that I did not see all the breadcrumbs until way far along. It was concealed so well. Everything was so subtle in it, and it was just maybe I just didn't. Maybe some movies you just go in like willingly, like ambivalent to it, or just you're watching everything. I think the movie is so flashy that you don't see some things that are a little more obvious on like rewatch.
Everything about Ernesto is heroic.
Yeah.
So you idolize this guy. He has to be the hero.
Pixar is so good at just like pulling the wool out and pulling the wool over your eyes, and just the obvious good guy is never good, but maybe they're not bad, but they're just a person. They're an obstacle. It's like in like Toy Story 4, the characters in there, like there's no like super bad guy in Toy Story 4, although you think there is, because all the other ones had a bad guy.
Yeah, they're all victims. Manfredi, what's your final choice?
So I really very much wanted to go with a Monkees song as my last choice.
Oh,
because I love the idea that they were a prefabricated band playing a band on television while also playing a band in real life.
Mm-hmm.
However, the more I sat down and thought about it, I thought, what's even better than a prefabricated band? How about a prefabricated band that doesn't even exist as humans?
Ah.
So I did what Don Kirshner did and recalibrated and went from the Monkees to the Archies
Ah.
and chose the song Sugar Sugar.
Oh, wow.
And you want to talk about perfect pop songs.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing, and I looked up the chords right now, and
Mhm.
Michael, I know you don't know what a chord is, so just zone out for a second here. But
Can do.
yeah, there's three chords in the whole song. It is like the simplest song, but there's so many hooks
Mm-hmm.
and little musical things happening in the background of the song. It's just fantastic. So Don Kirshner, who I mentioned, was this kind of rock music impresario who basically created the Monkees. He's the one who chose the actors to become the band. He's the one who organized the songwriting, got kind of all the session musicians together. He was the producer of the Monkees. And for several years it was a incredibly successful operation until those pesky kids decided they wanted more control over what they were putting out. They wanted to write songs, they wanted to be able to play instruments. And Don Kirshner was basically like, why would I do that? This is really successful, that this thing that we've got going. This is a great business operation. Why would I risk that by letting you guys screw it all up? So that led to a lot of tension, came to a head with Mike Nesmith punching a hole in a wall in an argument at a hotel and telling Don Kirshner that could have been your face.
Wow. He's like, I had this guy Charlie Manson auditioned. He's less violent than you.
No
Come
kidding.
on.
So Don Kirshner winds up getting himself fired from the Monkees. He loses the battle for creative control. And his next gig is this cartoon based on the Archies, or based on Archie, the comic book, the allegedly funny comic book staple. And he basically said, I want a band that won't talk back. And so how do you do that? Well, you just make them all, cells, animation characters. Animation characters aren't going to talk back to you. They're not going to complain about their royalties. They're not going to
Mhm.
complain that they don't get to write more songs. So he created this kind of group of real session musicians, industry professionals, to just come up with the biggest, dumbest pop songs you could think of for the Archies to sing as a band that the kids had put together. So that was kind of where they tie in the music. And Sugar Sugar was written by Jeff Barry, who had written a lot of the big songs in the early 1960s, a lot of those girl group songs. So like Then He Kissed Me, Be My Baby, Chapel of Love, Leader of the Pack. He co-wrote that with Andy Kim, who wound up having a #1 song years later with Rock Me Gently. And they had all these great session musicians working on this song. And it's just hook after hook after hook. I mean, it basically invented, or not quite invented, but it's the premier example of bubblegum pop.
Mhm.
I mean, you can't have a more bubblegum pop song than Sugar Sugar. And I always appreciated the fact they had Ron Dante was the lead singer of the Archies, or he's the one who did the lead singing. And if you watch the Archies cartoon, which I don't recommend because it is like sub Hanna-Barbera animation, it's like, like the Beatles cartoon, how shitty the animations were in that. It's even worse. But if you watch it, like Archie's voice, he had a very voice that was kind of like this, which sounds nothing like Ron Dante's singing voice. So I just appreciate that there's this. There wasn't even an attempt to try and match what Archie would sound like singing with Archie's speaking voice. I just always appreciate they just didn't even give a shit about that. And this song was huge. It was the #1 song for the year 1969.
Wow.
Think about that. The Summer of Love. All these amazing songs that are coming out. What's the biggest song of the year? Fucking Sugar Sugar. And I mean, I guarantee you, this is a song, though. Now that I have mentioned the song and talked about it for a couple of minutes, you, the podcast listener, you have this song stuck in your head.
Yeah.
You 100% you do.
Yeah. That's boy, it's a pretty great. That is a pretty great song, and it does. I remember hearing that the Screen Gems that produced the Monkees, one of the reasons radio hated them was because they weren't, and I think Sugar Sugar I read was pushed onto radio stations and said play this, and unlike the payola, by the late 60s, radio had become this very well-oiled machine in which promotional money was sent into the system to get records onto the airwaves. And when you have a show like the Monkees that is produced in a studio where they just hire the Neil Diamonds and the whoever's to make these songs, all of a sudden there's all this development and this money and this graft and this payola that doesn't go to DJs or record labels, and these songs people call and request these songs and they go on the radio without any of the tribute that's supposed to be paid to those people. And so I imagine Sugar Sugar was just as similar as a problem too. Like, hey, you fuckers, you're supposed to wet our beaks a little bit before something hits #1.
Yeah. Last thing on this that I got is, I know I've given many recommendations on what not to do in this episode. One thing I would recommend that you do is seek out Wilson Pickett's cover version of Sugar Sugar.
Had not heard of that.
It is fantastic. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Also, Bob Marley and the Wailers also covered Sugar Sugar. So it's a song that obviously has a lot of legs with a lot of very famous and influential musicians.
Wow. That's pretty cool. That's a cool choice. Okay, guys, that was a fun topic. I liked it. The things that I would love to pick are, let's go with the Cantina band song, because I think that was an early influence for me. I know. I would love to also pick A Kiss at the End of the Rainbow, because it brought a little tear to my eye when I saw it. And definitely you can't not vote for Spinal Tap. So let's go with Big Bottom. And let's go with, I'm tempted to go with That Thing You Would Do, but let's go Sugar Sugar, because I learned a lot about that. So that was pretty awesome. All right, dudes, this has been the Mount Rushmore of songs that only exist in TV as movies. I, as always, am Jeff.
I'm Richard.
Michael.